Commander Ethan Dawson stood at the view screen of the Earthship Intrepid, his eyes fixed on the massive black ships that had appeared without warning at the edge of the Arcturus system. In his 15 years exploring deep space, he had never seen anything like them. The ships looked like they were carved from pure darkness, their surfaces absorbing all light. "What are we looking at, Chief?" Dawson asked, his voice steady despite the tension in his shoulders. Chief Science Officer Nathan Clark shook his head as he studied the readings on his tablet. "Technology beyond anything we've encountered, sir. Their energy signatures are off. The charts. Those weapon systems could destroy planets. Their shields could probably withstand a supernova." Dawson rubbed his chin. Humanity had been exploring space for nearly a century now, establishing small colonies and making peaceful contact with a dozen alien species. None had posed any threat. These newcomers were different. "Any response to our greeting message?" he asked Communications Officer Alan Foster. "Yes, sir. They've sent coordinates for a meeting. They want us to send a team to their flagship." Foster looked up from his console, worry clear on his face. "They've also scanned us completely. They know exactly how many people we have and what weapons we carry." Dawson nodded slowly. "Prepare the shuttle. I'll lead the diplomatic team myself." Dr. Valerie Simmons, the fleet psychologist, stepped forward. "Commander, I should go too. First impressions will be crucial." "Agreed. Lieutenant Martinez, you're our best xenobiologist. You'll join us as well." Lieutenant Olivia Martinez nodded, her dark eyes serious. She had studied alien life forms across 3 star systems, but something told her these visitors would be unlike anything in her research. The shuttle journey to the alien flagship took 20 minutes. No one spoke much. As they approached the enormous black ship, Dawson felt like they were being swallowed by darkness itself. The docking bay was massive, large enough to hold their entire ship, not just their small shuttle. When the doors opened, they were met by 2 rows of guards. Each alien stood nearly 9 feet tall, with dark-scaled skin that shimmered with an oily rainbow effect under the lights. Their faces reminded Dawson of Earth's ancient predators, sharp, teeth visible even with mouths closed, eyes set forward like hunters, powerful muscles rippling under their battle armor. "Remember," Dawson whispered to his team, "show no fear." An alien stepped forward, taller than the rest. Its armor hummed with energy that made the human skin tingle from 10 feet away. "I am Supreme Hunter Zarkatak of the Kavex Dominion," the alien said, its words translated through the human's communication devices. The voice sounded like gravel being crushed. "You will follow." The human team was led through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. High ceilings, dark materials, and images of what could only be battle victories carved into the walls. They passed rooms where other aliens worked on equipment that Dawson couldn't begin to understand. Finally, they entered what appeared to be a command center. A dozen Kavex turned to stare at the humans with predatory eyes. Zarkatak spoke to one of his officers in their native language, a series of growls, clicks, and high-pitched sounds that made the translation software struggle. The Supreme Hunter then turned back to the humans. "Your species is new to us. You appear inadequate for combat. No natural weapons, small size, weak muscle structure." His head tilted as he studied them. "Perhaps you will serve better as sustenance or slaves." Dawson stepped forward, keeping his voice calm. "We prefer to be allies rather than food or servants. The human race has much to offer through peaceful exchange." The Kavex commander made a sound that might have been laughter, but it held no joy, only menace. 17 galactic civilizations have fallen to the Kavex. Some fought bravely, some begged. All feed our empire now. Dr. Simmons spoke next. "Supreme Hunter, we'd like to understand your culture better. Perhaps we could—" "There is nothing to understand," Zarkatak interrupted. "We hunt, we conquer. The strong consume the weak. This is the natural order." Lieutenant Martinez had been quiet, observing the aliens with professional interest. Their biology fascinated her. They seemed to have evolved from pure predator stock with no signs of the omnivorous compromises that shaped human evolution. Zarkatak suddenly moved toward her, so quickly she had no time to react. He loomed over, Her. His face inches from hers and let out a bone-chilling roar that displayed rows of serrated teeth. His breath was hot and smelled like metal. It was a classic predator intimidation display. Any sensible creature would freeze in terror or try to flee. Martinez did neither. Instead, in that moment of pure adrenaline and absurdity, a 9-foot alien warlord roaring in her face, she laughed. It wasn't a nervous laugh or a forced one. It was genuine, bubbling up from some deep place where fear mixed with the pure ridiculousness of the situation. Her laugh echoed in the command center, clear and unrestrained. The effect was immediate and unexpected. Zarkatak jerked backward, as if struck. The other Kavex in the room shifted positions, some reaching for weapons, others moving back. A strange tension filled the air. "What is this response?" Zarkatak demanded, his voice lower now, almost uncertain. Dawson, as surprised as the aliens by Martinez's reaction, quickly stepped in. "It's called laughter. It's a human response to many situations." The Supreme Hunter's eyes narrowed. "This sound is a weapon?" "No," Dr. Simmons said carefully, sensing something important happening. "It's an expression, sometimes of joy, sometimes of surprise. Sometimes it happens when we face fear." Zarkatak moved back further, studying Martinez with new intensity. "Your species makes this sound when facing death?" Martinez, realizing her laugh had changed something fundamental in the interaction, nodded. "Sometimes, yes. Human emotions are complex." The Kavex commander turned to his officers and spoke rapidly in their language. The humans' translation software caught fragments. Like the ancient enemy. An unpredictable response pattern. When Zarkatak turned back to the humans, his demeanor had changed subtly. "Your species requires further study before we determine your place in our empire. You will return to your ship. We will contact you again." As they were escorted back to their shuttle, Dawson whispered to Martinez, "What made you laugh?" She shook her head, still not quite believing what had happened. "He just looked so convinced of himself, like a cat that puffs up to look bigger. I couldn't help it." Back on the Intrepid, the senior staff gathered to discuss the strange encounter. "They were ready to classify us as prey," Nathan Clark said, reviewing the sensor data they'd gathered. Then something changed when Martinez laughed. "It wasn't just surprise," Dr. Simmons added. "It was closer to fear. But that makes no sense. Why would laughter frighten the most powerful predator species we've ever encountered?" Commander Dawson looked out at the massive black ship still hovering at the edge of the system. "I don't know, but we've bought ourselves some time to figure it out. And right now, time might be our most valuable resource." On the Kavex flagship, Supreme Hunter Zarkatak reviewed the recording of the human female's strange vocalization. It triggered memories from ancient Kavex history, stories told to younglings about the only creatures their ancestors had ever truly feared, creatures that had made similar sounds before revealing terrible, impossible powers. "Watch them closely," he ordered his intelligence officers. "These humans may be more dangerous than they appear." 3 days passed since the first meeting with the Kavex. Their black ships remained at the edge of the Arcturus system, moving occasionally but never approaching Earth's colony or the Intrepid. Commander Dawson ordered constant monitoring, while the science team worked to understand what had happened during their encounter. Chief Science Officer Nathan Clark hadn't slept much. He sat in the lab surrounded by screens showing footage of the meeting with the aliens. He played Lieutenant Martinez's laugh over and over, studying the Kavex reactions from multiple angles. "Found anything new?" asked Dr. Valerie Simmons as she entered with 2 cups of coffee. Clark nodded thanks for the coffee. "Look at this," he said, pointing to one screen. "Watch Supreme Hunter Zarkatak's physical response when Martinez laughs. Pupil dilation, muscle tension, a backward step. In human terms, we'd call that fear." "Fear? From the galaxy's top predators?" Simmons looked skeptical. What could they possibly fear about laughter? "I don't know yet," Clark admitted, "but I've noticed something else." He switched to different video clips. Every time any human showed strong emotion, especially laughter, The Kavek showed signs of discomfort. It's subtle, but it's there. Commander Dawson entered the lab. Admiral Wright is on her way from Earth. She'll be here tomorrow to take command of our response to the Kaveks. What can I tell her? Clark played the footage again. Sir, I think we've accidentally discovered something important about Kavek psychology. They react negatively to human emotional displays, especially laughter. That's not much to go on. Dawson frowned. Lieutenant Martinez joined them, carrying her own research tablet. Actually, it fits with what I've learned about their biology. The Kaveks evolved as pure apex predators. Their entire psychology is built around predator-prey relationships. She pulled up images of the aliens' brain scans they had managed to capture with their sensors. See this region? In humans, this handles emotional complexity. In the Kaveks, it's much smaller but connected directly to their threat assessment centers. So when prey laughs instead of showing fear, Dr. Simmons began. It breaks their understanding of the natural order, Martinez finished. In their evolutionary history, prey feared predators. That's how the universe worked. When we don't behave like proper prey, it confuses them at a fundamental level. Communications Officer Alan Foster burst into the lab. Commander, I've intercepted some Kaveks transmissions. They're sending small scout ships throughout the system, not as attack forces, but as observation posts. What are they watching? Dawson asked. Foster looked uncomfortable. Us, sir, but specifically they seem focused on entertainment venues. They've positioned observers near comedy clubs, amusement parks, sports arenas, anywhere humans gather and express strong emotions. They're studying us, Simmons said. They encountered something they don't understand and now they're trying to figure out what makes us tick. Dawson nodded slowly. This gives us an advantage. If they're uncertain, they won't attack immediately. On Earth, Lisa Kelly knew nothing about the alien ships hovering at the edge of human space. Her biggest concern that morning was getting her energetic corgi puppy, Max, to behave during their walk in Central Park. As Max tugged on his leash, Lisa noticed a tall figure watching from the shadows of a tree. Something seemed off about the person. They stood too still and their proportions weren't quite right. When Max spotted the stranger, he barked excitedly and pulled the leash from Lisa's hand. The puppy bounded toward the figure, tail wagging, furiously. As the stranger stepped back, the morning sunlight revealed flashes of scaled skin beneath what appeared to be a human disguise. Lisa gasped as she realized this was no human. Before she could react, Max reached the disguised alien and began playfully jumping around its feet. The sight of her tiny puppy challenging this towering figure struck Lisa as absurdly funny. She doubled over with laughter. The reaction was immediate. The disguised Kaveks froze completely, then backed away from the dog. It pulled out a small device, spoke rapidly into it in a strange language, then turned and ran with inhuman speed, disappearing into the trees. Lisa stood confused, her laughter dying as she picked up Max. She would later report the strange encounter to local authorities, who would forward it to military intelligence. Back in space, Admiral Samantha Wright arrived on the Intrepid the next day. She was a stern woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and a reputation for tough decisions. So you're telling me, she said after hearing the science team's report, that our best defense against these advanced aliens is to laugh at them? Not exactly, Admiral, Clark explained, but human emotional responses, particularly positive ones like laughter, seem to create psychological discomfort for them. It's as if they don't understand our emotional range. It buys us time, Commander Dawson added. They've postponed their usual conquest pattern to study us further. Admiral Wright studied the footage of Martinez laughing in the face of the Supreme, Hunter. In your opinion, what are they afraid of? Dr. Simmons leaned forward. I've developed a theory. These Kaveks evolved as apex predators, with psychological frameworks built entirely around hunting and dominance. Human evolution was different. We developed as social creatures with complex emotional lives. She displayed a chart comparing human and Kaveks' brain structures. What if concepts like humor, empathy, and hope are completely foreign to them? What if our emotional complexity is so alien that it represents an unknown variable they can't account for in their conquest calculations? As they spoke, the ship's sensors detected movement. Foster checked his console. Admiral, the COVX mothership is dispatching a communication drone. They're requesting another meeting. Wright straightened her uniform. Well then, let's not keep them waiting. Commander Dawson, prepare a shuttle. I want to see these laughing, phobic predators for myself. On the COVX flagship, Supreme Hunter Zarkatak faced the challenge of his long military career. The High Council had demanded answers about the humans, and he had none that made sense. The infiltration units report the same findings, his intelligence officer reported. The humans display unpredictable emotional responses. They emit the laughter sound, not just in the face of threats, but during social bonding, when viewing simulations of others' misfortune, even when communicating simple ideas. Zarkatak studied the footage from Earth. Humans laughing at entertainment venues, children laughing while playing, couples laughing during courtship rituals. Most disturbing, he said, these behaviors are similar to the ancient enemy described. In our oldest histories, the only species that ever threatened COVX dominance. Impossible, his second-in-command argued. The Void Devourers were destroyed millennia ago. Perhaps, Zarkatak said, watching a human child laugh while playing with a small animal. Or perhaps they simply changed form. The Supreme Hunter made his decision. We will meet with their leaders again. This time we must determine if these humans are truly connected to our ancient enemies, or if they represent an entirely new threat to our dominance of the galaxy. As Admiral Wright's shuttle approached the COVX flagship, she reviewed her strategy. If human emotions truly unsettled these predators, she would use that knowledge carefully, not just as a defense, but perhaps as the beginning of understanding between two very different species. Admiral Wright stood tall as she entered the COVX command center, her expression calm despite being surrounded by the 9-foot alien predators. Commander Dawson and Lieutenant Martinez flanked her, while Dr. Simmons watched the aliens carefully for any psychological tells. Supreme Hunter Zarkatak seemed larger than before, his battle armor glowing with energy fields. 4 other COVX commanders stood with him, their predatory eyes fixed on the humans. Admiral Wright of Earth, Zarkatak said, his translated voice rumbling through the chamber. Your species continues to confuse us. We have studied your behaviors and find them disturbing. Wright raised an eyebrow. Disturbing? How so? Your kind bare teeth when pleased, not when threatening. Your young engage in simulated combat for enjoyment. You produce strange vocalizations when facing danger. Zarkatak leaned forward. These behaviors defy natural law. Dr. Simmons noticed how the other COVX tensed when Zarkatak mentioned human laughter. She whispered to Admiral Wright, they're fixated on our emotional responses. This confirms our theory. Wright nodded slightly, then addressed the aliens. Supreme Hunter, perhaps our species evolved differently because we faced different challenges. Humans developed as social creatures. Our emotions help us connect with each other. Connection is weakness, one of the other COVX commanders growled. Predators stand alone. Yet you formed an empire, Wright pointed out. You work together toward common goals. Is that not connection? The COVX looked at each other, seemingly confused by this observation. Zarkatak changed the subject. We have intercepted your entertainment broadcasts. Your species creates simulations of danger and finds them pleasurable. You deliberately frighten yourselves. This behavior serves no evolutionary purpose. Lieutenant Martinez couldn't help it. She smiled at the alien's bewilderment. It's called having fun. The COVX commanders stepped back when they saw her smile, their clawed hands moving closer to their weapons. Your facial expression is a warning? Zarkatak demanded. No, Martinez said quickly. It's a smile. It means I'm happy or amused. You show teeth when pleased, Zarkatak muttered. Unnatural. Back on Earth, Defense Secretary Gregory Patterson faced a room full of nervous military leaders. The reports from the Intrepid had reached Earth Command, along with data about the massive destructive capabilities of the COVX fleet. If these aliens decide to attack, our conventional weapons won't stop them, General Frank Wilson said grimly. Their technology is centuries beyond ours. Patterson nodded, his face serious. Which is why we need unconventional weapons. He touched a control pad, and the large screen showed a new defense plan labeled Operation Punchline. Our scientists believe the Kavex have a psychological vulnerability to human emotional displays, particularly laughter, Patterson explained. We're going to exploit that. The military leaders looked skeptical. You want us to fight alien invaders with jokes? General Wilson asked. Exactly, Patterson said, along with sitcoms, comedy specials, and improvisation shows. Our most powerful weapons might be our comedians. Wilson shook his head. This is ridiculous. Patterson leaned forward. Perhaps, but if it works, we save lives. If it fails, we can still try conventional weapons. That afternoon, a Kavex scout ship approached Earth's defensive perimeter, testing the humans' response. Instead of firing warning shots, Earth Command transmitted comedy routines directly to the alien vessel. The effect was immediate. The scout ship's movements became erratic. It turned and retreated rapidly, nearly colliding with an asteroid in its haste to escape. Back on the Intrepid, Admiral Wright received the report of this success. They really are affected by our humor, she told Commander Dawson. But we need to understand why. Lieutenant Patricia Howard led a small team to investigate the abandoned Kavex scout vessel that had been left behind during the retreat. Ship was dark and empty when they boarded it, the crew having evacuated to a larger vessel. Check the ship's logs, Howard ordered. If we can access their computer systems, we might find answers. Tech specialist Eric Butler connected their translation device to the alien computer. Strange symbols flashed across the screen. I'm in, Butler said after several minutes. There's a lot of data here about humans. They've been studying us intensively. Howard looked over his shoulder. What else? Butler's eyes widened as new information appeared. This mentioned something called Void Devourers. Apparently, they were an ancient race that nearly drove the Kavex to extinction thousands of years ago. What's the connection to humans? Howard asked. The Void Devourers also displayed the laughter behavior before revealing terrible powers, Butler read. The Kavex believe we might be connected to their ancient enemies. On the Kavex mothership, a heated debate was underway in the Supreme Council chamber. 12 Kavex leaders, representing different battle fleets, argued about the human question. We should eliminate them immediately, snarled Fleet Commander Vex's Corps. Their behaviors are unpredictable. Unpredictability is dangerous. Our weapons can destroy their planet easily, another agreed. Why do we hesitate? Sarkatic raised a clawed hand for silence. Because we still do not understand what they are. If they possess the same abilities as the Void Devourers, attacking could trigger powers we are not prepared to face. The mention of the ancient enemy silenced the room. All Kavex knew the stories of the terrible beings who had laughed as they consumed entire Kavex battle fleets. We must learn more, Zarkatak insisted. Their laughter and smiles may be merely similar, to the Void Devourers not identical, or they may be warning signs of greater powers yet to be revealed. Meanwhile, Kavex scientists studied captured human entertainment. Comedy especially disturbed them. The scientist assigned to analyze human humor presented his findings to Zarkatak. They deliberately create situations that would cause pain, embarrassment, or failure, and then find pleasure in witnessing them, the scientist reported, his voice containing notes of disbelief. They call this comedy. What purpose does it serve? Zarkatak asked. None that we can determine, the scientist admitted. It appears to be pleasure for the sake of pleasure. They also deliberately seek out situations that induce fear for enjoyment. They call these horror stories or thrill rides. They voluntarily expose themselves to simulated danger, Zarkatak said slowly. This defies natural selection. The scientist displayed footage of humans laughing at a comedy performance. Most disturbing is their reaction. This laughter seems to release tension and create social bonds. They become stronger through shared vulnerability, a concept completely foreign to Kavex evolution. Back on the Intrepid, Admiral Wright met with her senior staff to discuss the information Lieutenant Howard had recovered from the abandoned scout ship. So they think we might be connected to some ancient enemy they once feared, Wright said, thoughtfully. This explains their caution. Dr. Simmons nodded. It gives us leverage, but it also means they might attack preemptively if they become convinced we're a threat. Then we need to convince them we're not their ancient enemy, Commander, Dawson suggested. Or, Lieutenant Martinez said with a slight smile, we convince them we're something even more interesting. Admiral Wright looked at her curiously. What do you have in mind, Lieutenant? The Kavex evolved as predators who understand only dominance and submission, Martinez explained. But humans evolved as social creatures who understand cooperation and emotional connection. What if we show them there's a third option beyond predator and prey? What if we introduce them to the concept of friendship? The others looked skeptical, but Martinez continued. They're fascinated by our emotions because they don't understand them. Let's help them understand. As they discussed this possibility, an urgent message arrived from Earth Command. 3 more Kavex battleships had entered the system. The standoff was escalating, and time was running out. Captain Daniel Morgan of the scout ship Curiosity knew his mission was risky. Admiral Wright had ordered him to gather more information about the Kavex fleet that had just entered the system. His small, fast ship was designed for stealth, but the aliens had superior sensors. Keep us in the shadow of that moon, Morgan told his pilot. We'll observe from a distance. The plan worked for nearly an hour. The Curiosity collected valuable data on the new Kavex ships. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the small vessel. We've been spotted, the pilot shouted. Energy readings off the charts, they're powering weapons. Morgan grabbed the ship's controls. Evasive action, get us out of... A bright flash filled the view screen. The Curiosity shuddered violently as the Kavex energy beam grazed its hull. Critical systems failed across the ship. We're losing power, the engineer reported. Engines down, shields failing. Before Morgan could respond, a tractor beam locked onto the disabled Curiosity. The small scout ship was pulled toward one of the massive Kavex vessels. Send an emergency signal to the Intrepid, Morgan ordered. Then wipe all sensitive data, they're taking us in. On the Intrepid, Commander Dawson received the distress call. Captain Morgan's ship has been captured, he told Admiral Wright. The Kavex have them. Wright's face hardened. Prepare a rescue team. It's too risky, Dawson argued. Their ships outgun us completely. We'd never get close. We can't abandon our people, Wright insisted. Dr. Simmons stepped forward. There might be another way. If the Kavex are truly affected by human emotional responses, perhaps Captain Morgan can use that to his advantage. Aboard the Kavex vessel, Morgan and his crew were separated and placed in individual cells. The captain paced the small space, looking for any weakness in the strange, dark metal walls. Hours passed before the door finally opened. 2 Kavex guards entered, followed by a smaller alien whose armor was less militaristic and more functional. A mind reader, Morgan realized. He had been briefed about the Kavex ability to extract information directly from captive minds. Your thoughts will be examined, the mind reader said through a translation device. Resistance causes pain. Compliance may earn mercy. The guards pushed Morgan into a chair and secured his arms. The mind reader placed cold, scaled hands on either side of the captain's head. Morgan felt an immediate pressure in his skull, like a headache growing rapidly. Show me your fleet positions, the mind reader demanded. Show me Earth's defenses. Morgan knew he needed to protect that information. In a desperate attempt to shield his thoughts, he focused on the first thing that came to mind: jokes. His grandfather had been a comedian, and Morgan had memorized dozens of his routines as a child. Why did the chicken cross the road? Morgan thought loudly. To get to the other side. The mind reader flinched. Stop this distraction, Morgan continued, filling his mind with punchlines, wordplay, and silly stories. What's brown and sticky? A stick. Why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything. The pressure in Morgan's head increased painfully, but he didn't stop. He pictured funny scenes from comedy movies. recalled amusing anecdotes from his academy days. Anything to keep military secrets buried under layers of humor. The mind reader made a strange gurgling sound. The alien's hands began to tremble against Morgan's temples. Suddenly, the mind reader collapsed to the floor, thrashing as if in pain. The guards rushed forward, grabbing their fallen comrade. They looked at Morgan with what seemed like fear in their predatory eyes. They dragged the mind reader out, locking the cell door behind them. Morgan sat stunned, his head pounding but his secrets intact. His improvised mental defense had somehow overwhelmed the Kavex telepath. Back on Earth, scientist Catherine Brooks worked frantically in her laboratory. As one of Earth's leading neurologists, she had been tasked with understanding why human laughter affected the Kavex. "Look at these readings," she told her assistant, pointing to brain scans on her screen. "When humans laugh, our brains produce a specific pattern of neural activity." The assistant studied the colorful images. "And you think this affects the Kavex somehow?" Brooks nodded excitedly. "Not just the neural activity. It creates a unique electromagnetic frequency. I believe the Kavex brain is hypersensitive to this specific frequency. It's like hitting the exact resonant frequency of a crystal glass. It shatters." She pulled up another screen showing alien brain patterns. Their minds evolved for hunting and killing. The frequency created by human laughter triggers areas of their brain associated with primal fear. "So when we laugh, it's like a sonic weapon to them?" the assistant asked. "Essentially, yes," Brooks confirmed, "and I think we can amplify it." Within days, Brooks and her team developed what they called laughter generators, devices that could reproduce and amplify the specific electromagnetic frequency created by human laughter. The United Earth Defense installed these generators on all frontline ships. The first test came when a Kavex battle fleet approached the human colony on Proxima Centauri. Commander Joseph Russell, in charge of the colony's defense, activated the experimental weapon as the alien ships entered orbit. Massive speakers broadcast the sound of 2,000 people laughing simultaneously, while hidden emitters projected the associated neural frequency directly at the Kavex vessels. The effect was even more dramatic than expected. The Kavex ships began moving erratically. Several collided with each other as their pilots seemed to lose coordination. Within minutes, the entire fleet retreated from the colony, leaving behind one damaged ship that couldn't maintain speed with the others. Earth forces boarded the abandoned vessel and captured its commander, the first high-ranking Kavex prisoner taken by humans. The alien was brought to a secure facility for questioning. Dr. Simmons led the interrogation, with Admiral Wright observing. The Kavex commander, who identified himself as Zex Vuller, sat rigidly in the oversized chair designed to accommodate his large frame. "Why does human laughter affect your people so strongly?" Simmons asked directly. Zex Vuller stared at her with his predatory eyes. "You truly do not know?" "We have theories," Wright said from the corner of the room. "We'd like to hear your explanation." The alien was silent for a long moment before speaking. "In our evolutionary history, only the void devourers laughed before they fed. Your sound triggers ancestral memory. You sound like the only predator that ever hunted us." Simmons and Wright exchanged surprised looks. "These void devourers?" Simmons asked carefully. "What were they?" "Ancient beings of terrible power," Zex Vuller said, a tremor in his usually steady voice. "They came from the darkness between galaxies. They hunted Kavex hunting parties for sport. They would laugh, just as humans do, before they consumed our ancestors." "But we are not these void devourers," Wright insisted. Zex Vuller's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps, perhaps not. But you share their most terrifying trait. You find joy in the face of danger. This is not the behavior of prey. This is the behavior of something worse than a predator." On the Intrepid, Lieutenant Martinez received unexpected news. Captain Morgan had escaped from the Kavex vessel during the confusion caused by the laughter generator attack. His shuttle was being brought aboard. When Morgan arrived at the command center, he was greeted as a hero. "How did you manage to escape their mind reader?" Martinez asked him. Morgan grinned. "I thought of every joke I could remember. Apparently, human humor is toxic to their telepathic abilities. As Earth forces celebrated these small victories, Supreme Hunter Zarkatak faced growing pressure from the Kavex High Council. Some demanded immediate withdrawal from human space. Others called for overwhelming force to obliterate Earth before humans could fully develop their weapons. Zarkatak studied the reports from all encounters with humans. A pattern was emerging, one that challenged everything the Kavex believed about the natural order of the universe. The humans are neither predator nor prey, he told his council. They are something else entirely. 6 months had passed since first contact with the Kavex. The massive black ship still hovered at the edge of human space, neither advancing nor retreating. Both species watched each other carefully, balanced on the edge of war. Earth's defenses had grown stronger. Every ship now carried laughter generators. Colonies had installed large-scale versions that could protect entire planets. Yet everyone knew the truth. If the Kavex decided to attack with their full force, humanity might not survive. Ambassador Ryan Mitchell stood before the Earth Defense Council, his expression serious. The room was filled with military leaders and government officials, all waiting to hear his proposal. "We can't continue this standoff forever," Mitchell began. "The Kavex have the technology to destroy us. We have a psychological advantage that keeps them uncertain. But eventually, one side will make a move." Admiral Wright nodded from her seat at the council table. "What do you suggest, Ambassador?" Mitchell took a deep breath. "Cultural exchange. If the Kavex fear what they don't understand, then understanding might eliminate fear." The council chamber erupted in objections. "We can't let those predators—" "Onto Earth!" one general shouted. "They'll learn our weaknesses," another warned. Mitchell raised his hands for quiet. "They already know our physical weaknesses. What they don't understand is our minds, our emotions, our social connections. That's what confuses and frightens them." Dr. Simmons, who had been studying the Kavex prisoner for months, stood to support Mitchell. "The Kavex see the universe as divided into predators and prey. We need to show them there's another way of existing." After hours of debate, the council approved Mitchell's plan. A message was sent to Supreme Hunter Zarkatak, proposing a formal cultural exchange. To everyone's surprise, the Kavex leader agreed, though with strict conditions for security. 2 weeks later, the first Kavex delegation arrived on Earth. Their ship landed in a specially prepared area in the Arizona desert, far from major population centers. The aliens emerged heavily armed and extremely tense, their predatory eyes scanning constantly for threats. Ambassador Mitchell greeted Supreme Hunter Zarkatak with a formal bow instead of a smile, respecting the aliens' discomfort with human, facial expressions. "Welcome to Earth. We have prepared a tour of various human cultural centers." The Kavex delegation was first taken to observe a symphony orchestra. The aliens stood rigid as the music washed over them. "These sounds serve what purpose?" asked Zarkatak. "They create feelings," Mitchell explained. "Beauty, sadness, joy, excitement. Music helps us experience and process emotions." The Supreme Hunter's head tilted slightly. "You deliberately manipulate your own emotional states?" "We do," Mitchell confirmed. "Emotions are important to humans. They help us connect with each other." Next, they visited a sports arena where a basketball game was underway. The Kavex watched with growing interest as the players competed. "This is combat training?" one of the aliens asked. "Not exactly," Mitchell said. "It's a game. Competition for enjoyment, not survival." Zarkatak studied the cheering crowd. "The observers take pleasure in watching others compete. Interesting." The most dramatic reaction came when the delegation was taken to a children's playground. The Kavex stood completely still, watching human children run, climb, slide, and laugh. When a little girl fell down, got up, and continued playing without concern, Zarkatak moved closer to observe. "Your young practice falling without injury," he noted. "They simulate danger in safe conditions." Mitchell nodded. "Children learn through play. They practice life skills in a protected environment." Zarkatak watched a group of children playing tag. "Your young simulate death and rebirth in their games. They practice loss without consequence. This is why you do not fear as others do. Though, Supreme Hunter turned to face Mitchell directly. I begin to understand. Your species evolved differently than ours. You are not apex predators like the Kavex, yet you are not prey. You are something else. Back at the Secure Diplomatic Center, scientist Elizabeth Perry met with Kavex biologists. Together, they studied the evolutionary histories of both species. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and social cooperators, Perry explained, showing diagrams of early humans. We weren't the strongest or fastest, so we developed tools, language, and social structures to survive. The Kavex scientist tapped a clawed finger on images of human brain development. And laughter? What purpose does this serve? Laughter, developed as a social bonding mechanism, Perry said. It releases tension and creates connections between people. When we laugh together, we form stronger groups. Fascinating, the alien scientist murmured. Kavex never developed this. We evolved as solitary hunters who came together only for mating and territory defense. As the cultural exchange continued, Commander Dawson hosted a diplomatic dinner for the Kavex leaders. The aliens had been provided with food suitable for their biology, while the humans enjoyed Earth cuisine. During the meal, Dawson told a self-deprecating joke about his own clumsiness. The human guests laughed. The Kavex watched with intense interest. You mock your own weakness, one Kavex scientist noted. This behavior would be fatal in our society. Dawson smiled. Humans often laugh at our own mistakes. It helps us accept our imperfections and move forward. Supreme Hunter Zarkatak had been quiet throughout the meal. Now he spoke. I understand why the Void Devourers frightened my ancestors. They too could laugh in the face of death. But now I see that laughter does not mean the same thing for all species. He looked around the table at the humans. You hunt in packs like we do, but you also communicate complex emotions with your pack. This is why your species thrives despite your physical limitations. After 3 weeks on Earth, the Kavex delegation prepared to return to their fleet. Ambassador Mitchell met with Zarkatak one final time. Supreme Hunter, what will you tell your High Council? Mitchell asked. Zarkatak's predatory face was unreadable to human eyes. I will tell them that humans are neither prey nor predator. You are something new, something interesting. The peace treaty that followed established humans as the only species. The Kavex would treat as equals rather than prey. Both sides agreed to respect territorial boundaries and share certain non-military technologies. As cultural exchange deepened over the following months, some younger Kavex even attempted to understand humor, though their first jokes were terrifying by human standards. At the signing of the Human-Kavex Accord, Ambassador Mitchell made a brief speech. Today marks a new understanding between our species. We came from different evolutionary paths, but we've found common ground. Sometimes the best way to defeat an enemy is to help them see you were never enemies at all. As the formal ceremony concluded, Supreme Hunter Zarkatak approached Mitchell. Your species has taught mine something valuable. The universe is more complex than predator and prey. There are other ways to exist. Then, to Mitchell's astonishment, the massive alien made a strange sound, rough and halting but unmistakable. Zarkatak was attempting to laugh. Later, as the Kavex ships prepared to depart Earth orbit, Lieutenant Martinez stood with Commander Dawson on the observation deck of the Intrepid. Do you think it will last? Martinez asked. Peace with the galaxy's most feared predators? Dawson watched the black ships moving gracefully against the stars. I think we've shown them something new, and they're curious enough to explore it further. Who would have thought? Martinez smiled. That human laughter would save Earth from invasion. It wasn't just the laughter, Dawson said thoughtfully. It was what laughter represents, our capacity for joy, even in the face of danger. Our ability to form bonds beyond mere survival. In the end, it wasn't human weapons that saved us, but human nature itself. As the last Kavex ship disappeared into the darkness of space, humanity looked to the stars with new confidence. They had faced the galaxy's apex predators and shown them that there was more to existence than hunting or being hunted. and somewhere on a Kavex ship, a supreme hunter practiced a strange new behavior. His subordinates thought it odd, even disturbing. But Zarkatak continued his efforts, making that peculiar human sound. He was learning to laugh.